Phoenix.
Wake up, it's time to see the love within, the heart that's free, free, free.
Know Thyself, and the Allegory of the Matrix.
Know thyself. We all understand, from the first reading of this imperative philosophical sentence, that Socrates is referring to a work of introspection. More precisely, it is a question of seeing oneself as a whole and unique subject instead of the sum of the images of an object. One could think that Socrates and Plato may have been the first normal men who managed to describe their self-analysis with each other's help, even if this concept of analysis came much later with Freud. They had understood their full potential by discovering who they really were. Socrates awakened through a work of introspection. Knowing that awakening can only come from such work, with reference here to the etymological origin of the word work, he undertook to guide his fellow men, including Plato, by explaining what this work of introspection was, which only the subject himself could complete, whether with or without external help. Socrates cannot precisely define what enlightenment is, because he understands that it is impossible to describe the wisdom of the enlightened man to a person who has not yet completed his work of introspection. He probably felt like a self-taught awakened being, unable to really teach another person how to wake up. And probably many other aspects of his personal, social, and political lives have contributed to this awakening without him putting a word on them all. He had found his way with a focus on introspection. But there are so many people analyzed in our world who are not fully awake that he has probably omitted these other aspects. Analysis is not enough. It certainly allows you to move to another level of awakening, but not necessarily to reach a level where you become a free thinker. Thus, know thyself is a necessary but not sufficient command for everyone. In this context, it is also necessary for awakened beings to share their journey in detail with the other aspects that led to the awakening so that they can be hints for others. To an awakened being, one could say after the know thyself, retrace your path. Plato was somewhere, in anticipation, the first Cartesian. For him, in addition to knowing himself, his journey went through a focus on doubt. In the allegory of the cave, the real men, or the shadows, are all images of men. But those who observe the shadows are asleep, whereas the real men are awake, outside the cave and recognize each other. The cave is a bit like the first Matrix. Our world is also a cave, and Plato's journey was to open his eyes to the fact that there were awakened men and others still on the way. In this respect, it should be noted that there are in fact an infinite number of levels of awakening. Some men have advanced further in their journey and are closer to the exit of the cave, closer to the light and to awakening. And outside, there are still people closer to the entrance of the cave, and others who are already far away from it, and exploring the world to satisfy an infinite curiosity. In Plato's journey, it seems that the focus was placed on the doubt about the appearances of our world. With this allegory, Plato managed to find a pattern of thought that allowed him to see his fellow citizens, and try to determine who was as awake as he was, who was less, and who was more, which is an error-prone task. Indeed, one can cross every day. On one hand, many people who judge others, who think all other beings are less awake than they are. People with too much ego who think they got it all, instead of understanding their finite knowledge is only illustrating how little they know about the universe and their sister souls. And on the other hand, some people who are insecure, who consider most other beings are more awake than they are. People lacking ego who underestimate themselves instead of understanding they are worthier than most of the people they cross. It is likely that Plato also listened to Socrates' advice and knew himself as well. But without this almost Cartesian doubt, it is probable that Plato would not have succeeded in awakening. The know thyself was not enough for him. Note that Socrates most likely also had this doubt in him in a strong manner, but it was not with the same focus as Plato. It was a different path with the same ingredients in different proportions. Many other ingredients probably played a role as well, such as the desire to seek happiness that I will mention in the next episode.